got your number all night. I'm always on your team, I got your back, alright. Taking those losses if it treats you right.
The last they heard from her was a text message saying that she was going to sleep.
Know what you've been holding back, heart attacks every night. Oh, you know it's not right. I will follow you way down, wherever you may go. I follow you way down to your deepest low. I'll always be around, wherever life takes you. You know I follow you.
Friends, today I have a story based in Northern Virginia, a tale of twisted love, obsession, and rage. This story is relatively unknown. One thing I would like to say is, images were limited of this story and the actual facts were hard to find considering this took place back in 2008. So a couple of months ago, I managed to get in contact with the judge who tried this case, and he was kind enough to give me some official documents of statements to give me more context on what happened. Unfortunately, I lost everything. Yes, I know I'm a fraud, but I did find an article that covered this story, so let me read the article out to you. I'll try and portray it as accurately as possible, so if you do end up liking this video, please subscribe. On the balmy evening of July the 3rd, 2008, three young women met in the stands of a soccer stadium in Woodbridge, Virginia. They were there to watch a preliminary match in the 2008 Afghan Cup, an annual event that draws hundreds of Afghan Americans to the Virginia exurbs for a weekend of sports and music. The three friends, who all grew up in Northern Virginia, were waiting for one more to complete their group. Homaira Rahman, a tall, pretty 25-year-old, arrived around 9 p.m. She was her usual bubbly self. But within half an hour, Rahman's phone began to ring. It was Ehsan Amin, a man she had dated off and on for about 2 years. She had recently tried to finally completely end contact with him, but his calls never stopped. This time, as usual, he wanted to know where she was. Rahman took the call and tried to be brief. She told him she was at the soccer games with friends, no big deal. She hung up, and he kept calling back again and again. Each time the phone rang, Rahman got more distressed. He was threatening her again, she said. Her friends were exasperated and worried. Amin's bullying was an old source of anxiety. When he called again, a friend asked Rahman to hand over the phone. The friend, when she went to court in this case, told the courtroom that when she spoke to Ehsan, she said, "Get lost. We are at a football game." She told Amin on the phone, "Everything's okay, he's with the girls," and he replied, "Shut the fuck up, give her the phone." That's a direct quote. Amin was in a rage. He threatened to hurt Rahman, and just as frightening, he had driven to her parents' home in Vienna and said he was prepared to go inside and tell her parents about their relationship. And that's key. Why would telling her parents about the relationship be a problem? More on that later. Homaira Rahman begged him not to do it. Like many Afghan immigrants, Rahman's parents did not approve of their daughter dating. She told Amin to go back to Woodbridge, where he lived with relatives. Rahman's friends thought they'd seen the last of these tantrums. She had finally dumped Amin with no possibility of friendship about 3 months before. But that night at the soccer game, they realized Amin was not going to quit, or as they stay on the streets, he was pussy whipped. That's when we all decided we needed to take serious action, a friend said. The friend said, "Listen, this is not the end. We need to fix it." The police wouldn't fix it at the time, stirring up too much attention and perhaps just making him more angry. Perhaps they thought they could report him to immigration authorities since Homaira knew that Amin was in the country illegally. After the game, Rahman called Amin's house and got word that he was headed home. Convinced the moment of danger had passed, she got into her car, still crying. Her friends told her they'd figure out what to do in the morning. As Homaira was on her way home from the soccer game, her friends kept calling her asking her how she is, and she just said, "Yeah, I'm okay, everything will be fine." You see, Rahman and Amin were both part of the 20,000 strong Afghan community in Northern Virginia at the time. Right now, so much bigger. but their origins couldn't have been more different. Homaira was born in America. She graduated from George Mason University in 2005 and had a good job in human services at Chevy Chase Bank in Tyson's Corner. Like many unmarried Afghan American women, Rahman continued to live in her parents' home after graduation. Since she paid no rent, she could spend most of what she saved, and this is normal in Pakistani and Afghan communities. Very similar culture, the only difference is the language. Generally speaking, you stay home with your parents up until you get married. And although friends and family nagged Homaira to save her money, she indulged her material desires, buying closets full of designer clothes and gaining a reputation as a fashionista who never wore the same outfit twice. She actually joked that Tyson's Corner Center was her second home. Amin had been in America for only a few years. He had entered the United States legally, possibly by virtue of a marriage confirmed by friends and law enforcement sources, but the terms of his welcome had expired. Essentially, it seems he may have told the American government, yeah, I've got a girl I'm going to marry, here's proof of our potential marriage engagement or whatever, but then whatever he received when he landed probably expired. That's the best way I can explain it, but I could be wrong. But Amin had an alias. His actual name was Ajmal Hashemi, and I think the reason why he chose a different name was because of this visa expiration, if you like. Rahman had taken note of Amin's handsome features when she first saw him waiting tables at the Afghan kebab restaurant in Springfield. Sparks flew, and she told her friends she thought their server was cute. Rahman's interest in romance thrilled her friends. Rahman was shy and had never had a boyfriend. One of the friends said, "For us it was, oh finally, she finally thinks someone's cute." An aunt who was less conservative than Rahman's parents knew Amin and offered to set them up according to a friend. It took several weeks, but soon a romance blossomed. They were as much of a couple as they could be without telling Rahman's parents or many of their friends or relatives. Amin's career prospects improved soon as well. He got a job selling used cars at AutoQuest in Stafford. But the relationship quickly became dysfunctional according to friends. Amin, who seemed sweet and introspective at first, lost his temper if he didn't know where Rahman was and who she was with. In other words, he was just a moron. If she went out to the clubs in Washington, D.C., he'd call before 11 p.m. and convince her to head back to Virginia. Washington, D.C. and Virginia are literally 10-15 minutes apart. Northern Virginia, that is. Rahman was not entirely open about the details of her relationship. She spoke about Amin in oblique terms, hinting that she wanted to move on but couldn't quite make that happen. Whenever his calls interrupted shopping trips at the mall or outings in DC, Rahman would wander away to answer the phone and return distraught. On several occasions, friends say, Rahman broke up with Amin, but she never totally severed contact. One of the friends said he would just somehow come back into her life. I guess he just made her believe that no one else could love her like he did. Whenever she dumped him, he would come back with perfume and flowers to woo her again. A friend says he acted like most players who yell at their girlfriend, treat them like shit, and then the next day buy them flowers. A friend who testified during the trial said that Rahman and Amin seemed happy together just 6 months prior, when the three of them went out for dinner at the Cheesecake Factory in Tyson's Corner. Still, throughout the course of the relationship, Homaira Rahman's friends kept telling her, break up with this guy. One friend said, there was no trust at all. I asked her, where do you think this is going? When Rahman finally cut off contact with Amin, she says, I was relieved, but little did I know. Now, sometime before midnight on July the 3rd, again back in 2008, a neighbor of Homaira's, called Mary, pulled into their road and she saw Homaira standing in the street with a man. She looked distressed and waved just as if she needed help. The man, who the neighbor did not recognize, had his hand around Homaira's upper arm. The neighbor had just pulled into their driveway, got out and walked over to a friend who had arrived first in another car. The neighbor said to the friend, do you think we should go check up on that couple? And when the friend said, what couple? They turned around and Homaira and Amin had vanished. The next morning, a man walking down one of the side streets near her home saw a body lying in a pool of blood. Homaira had been stabbed 91 times and beaten around the face. There were bite marks on her arm, her purse, and a broken pair of scissors lay on the concrete. 91 times. This is a crime based in emotion. But I'll break that down in a bit. Fairfax Police Detective Steve Shillingford got the page at 7:45 a.m. I've tried contacting this Shillingford. He's nowhere to be seen, by the way. At the crime scene half an hour later, he identified Rahman from the driver's license in her purse. But there were few other clues to work from. Her parents knew nothing about her relationship with Amin or his threats. Shillingford realized that Rahman's cell phone was missing and arranged for a forced dump. This allowed police to go and collect data on phone pings and phone numbers that have been coming in and going out on her phone. One number showed up again and again. It was a landline connected to a home in Woodbridge. Shillingford and his partner drove to the house and spoke with a man who told them that his cousin, Ehsan Amin, had been in a car accident and was being treated at Inova Fairfax Hospital. The detectives drove to the emergency room where they found Amin asleep on a gurney. According to Virginia State Police, Amin had caused a 3-car collision on I-495 early that morning, probably less than an hour after Rahman's neighbor saw her standing on the street. At 12:06 a.m. on July the 4th, a 2006 Mercedes E350 lost control on an exit ramp at the Springfield interchange and sideswiped a Honda Civic. The Mercedes then veered into a 2001 Lincoln Navigator, forcing it off the road. The car finally came to a rest after colliding with the Jersey wall on the right side of the road. The driver fled on foot. Police traced the Mercedes to the Stafford dealership where Amin worked. It's unclear how Amin ended up at the hospital, but by the time homicide detectives arrived around 2 p.m., he had already been charged with reckless driving and felony hit and run. He was in bad shape, in addition to a slash wound on his throat, later determined to be self-inflicted. He had cuts on the fingers of his right hand, an injury police believe was allegedly caused when his hand slipped down the blood-coated scissors he used on Homaira Rahman. Doctors had cleared him to leave pending an evaluation in the psych ward, which might not have fared well. At the time, Amin told the hospital staff that he had broken up with his girlfriend and he wanted to take his own life. An attendant wheeled the bandaged suspect into a private room. Shillingford introduced himself and placed a small recorder on the gurney. Amin started talking. Something bad had happened, he said, repeating it again and again. Something bad had happened. Something bad had happened. He went on to say, "I think I beat my girlfriend. I didn't mean to do it. I loved her so much," he told the detective. He'd been drinking when it happened. Shillingford, at the time, didn't place Amin under arrest, not just yet, but he did read him his rights. Then he got to the point. He said, "Did you stab your girlfriend?" Amin responded, "With what?" Shillingford said, "That's what I'm asking you." And Amin said, "Well, she had some scissors." This was enough to convince Shillingford, who placed Amin under arrest. He was charged with first-degree murder. If convicted, he stood to serve 20 years to life in prison, after which immigration officials would seek to have him deported. Amin's trial promised to reveal many details about the crime and the relationship between Amin and Rahman, details she had carefully hidden from her family and many friends. One relative said at the time that gossip and the subsequent pain and humiliation would hurt her family as much as the murder itself. Within hours of Amin's arrest, speculation about the crime began erupting on local message boards and online Afghan forums. The posts included cruel rumors and criticism of everyone involved. Rahman, her friends and family, and Amin. Anonymous writers suggested that Rahman deserved what she got because she had abandoned the tradition. No, she didn't, you fucking idiot. If her parents had allowed her to date, others asked, might she have been comfortable enough to tell them she was in trouble? When several women spoke up about dating difficulties of Afghan American women, they became the subject of personal attacks themselves. Rahman's family and friends have tried to counter the vitriol on the internet by sharing stories of a young woman who strived to fulfill the expectations of two cultures, and this is where we come to the why. Rahman's generation of young, prosperous Afghan Americans led busy social lives that served to preserve their culture and at the same time break down old conventions. The Afghan Student Association at George Mason, which Rahman helped start, opened the door to mixed gender outings that would have been impossible a decade ago. Rahman and her friends went clubbing in DC. Even though many of them did not drink and attended concerts given by Afghan pop singers in hotels in suburban Virginia. At a memorial service at George Mason in July of 2008, which drew a crowd of several hundred, Rahman's friends and relatives took turns at the mic. Her girlfriends, clutching loose, unfamiliar headscarves, talked about her friend's unending positive attitude and her giving nature. She taught us that we should live each day to the fullest, for tomorrow may never come. Family members also spoke up about growing up with Rahman. One of her family members, who was a cousin, said that Rahman always felt like a sister. Their parents had moved to Virginia in the 1980s following the 1979 Russian invasion. And this is key. You have to understand the Afghans came to America due to the Russian Empire going into Afghanistan and trying to take over, right? So the Americans gave them political asylum. So now you have Afghan immigrants, same as my parents who went over to Britain after World War II, right? You now have a clash of civilization. Conservative Muslims now living in a Western, liberal, individualistic world. So they're trying to make sense of, well, my parents are telling me I can't date, but everywhere I go, people are dating. What am I supposed to do? I'm not saying each side is right or wrong. I'm just trying to give you a context of one's mentality. The families were educated and had the means to afford relocation but still struggled, working long hours at low-paying jobs so the kids could have a chance. Rahman's generation took on the next challenge, assimilating to American culture while preserving their ethnic identity. This is the class of civilizations I was referring to. Rahman and her cousins would speak English, not Farsi, when they hung out together, but they still went to mosque and attended the countless engagement parties, weddings, and funerals that brought the community together. When family members often scolded Rahman for her spendthrift ways, at the memorial, her extravagance became a virtue. Family members recalled chastising her for spending $250 on a Dior bracelet when she could have purchased a knockoff for $10. But it's not the real thing, she said, and that was that. When her grandmother fell ill for the last time, Homaira hurried to the hospital every day after work with gifts of candy and perfume. But Rahman had been right to do it. The attention made a dying woman happy. She was wiser than both of us, her family member said. While many things have changed, reputation and family name hold a powerful sway over individual lives, and this is why the parents were concerned that the gossip over this relationship would be just as overwhelming as the death itself. You see, in Muslim families, I'm Pakistani, this is a story about Afghan, but the cultures are very similar. The honor is with the woman. The family's reputation rests with the woman. Now, whether you agree or disagree, don't be mad at me. I know in the comments you're going to start bashing the keyboard. Hey, TruRed, shut the fuck up. You don't know what you're talking about. I'm just telling you as it is. Make of it as you will. If a young woman gets a bad reputation for dating openly or showing too much skin, her parents will share the blame for her behavior. Both young adults and parents say the best option is often something like don't ask or don't tell. It might be acceptable to go to dinner with a young man, but going out to dinner with different men on different days, that is a problem. Since dating was considered taboo in most households, especially for young women, most romances spring out of friendships that develop in public settings, like school or social gatherings. Lately, the internet has provided an opportunity for unsupervised exploration, but even then, face-to-face meetings are carefully planned. Now, regarding the trial itself, at a preliminary hearing on September the 3rd, Amin's defense attorney, Peter Greenspun, argued that the prosecution's case relied on speculation and that the evidence did not point to premeditated murder. No one could say who started what on the night of July 3rd, he said. You can say who ended it, perhaps, but the evidence supported manslaughter at worst. Now, here's the idea. 91 times he stabbed her. Clearly, this was an act based on emotion, based on insecurity. So what could she have done to make him feel this way? There's no justifying it. But from what I remember of those aforementioned documents I lost because I'm a muppet, it was said that maybe she led him on. And let's just say for argument's sake she did, right? Let's just say when she first saw him at the restaurant, she was into him. He then got into her, right? And then he fell in love with her quick, it seems like. And let's just say, yeah, she liked him, but then she wasn't really sure and she was kind of leading him on and made him feel insecure and all this kind of stuff. Let's just say that is the case. So fucking what? It's your job as a man to have backbone. You know what I mean? When a woman hurts you, upsets you in life, you know, when you fail, at any moment in time when you fail, it's the best thing that can happen to you, because then you wake up to what you are not paying attention to. But this guy, not even a man, this child, right? His whole life was defined by this woman. Why? Because he had no other purpose. His entire validation, his entire being was thrown into this woman's existence. He was only happy when she said, oh, I'm not going out. He was only happy when he was with her. He became obsessed. She became everything. And if I've learned anything in life, no woman is attracted to a desperate man. During the court case, Amin turned around just once during the hearing, looking over his shoulder at the two groups of family and friends. A frown drew deep, triangular creases in his face at the end as his people walked out in silence. A woman from the other side said aloud, "He'll pay for this." Outside in the hallway, a group of Amin's friends stood waiting for Greenspun. They said they couldn't talk about the case, but they said that they do remember every story has two sides. The truth will come out, one said. What truth are you talking about? It doesn't matter what happened. It doesn't matter about the functionality of their relationship. As I said, let's just assume she led him on, which is the worst thing she could have done. Let's say she cheated on him. I don't care. You don't go and stab someone and murder them over it. Are you pathetic? You see, his pursuit of Homaira was a selfish domain. When he bought her flowers, he did it to make him feel better. He did it to be like, oh, this girl likes me. She wants me. When he bought her perfume, when he called her and told her, no, you can't do this or you can't go that, or when he called her and said, where are you? And she told him, and then she listened to him, this made him have a sense of power. His relationship with Homaira was about himself. It was never about making her happy. Eventually, in a plea agreement, prosecutors agreed to reduce a first-degree murder charge to second-degree murder and asked for no more than 20 years in prison. Fairfax Circuit Court Judge Bruce White imposed the full 20 years. Amin apologized for the killing in court and said he prayed for Rahman every day. No, you're praying for yourself, you selfish twat. Rahman's family established the Homaira Rahman Foundation to raise money for child refugees of the war in Afghanistan. And there you have it. Now, it seems Amin will be released sometime this decade, and I think they're going to deport him back to Afghanistan. And given the current situation in Afghanistan, maybe him being thrown in the middle of the streets of Kabul is the best thing for him. Either way, this story is about a young woman, like any other American woman, who just tried to live her life, and a man came along, lonely, insecure, only thinking about himself, and he took away everything she had. Fuck that motherfucker. Comment, tell me what you think.